Rome, year 476 AD. The most powerful empire the world had ever known falls in a single day. 1,000 years of greatness erased from the map. Was it a barbarian invasion? No. A devastating plague? Neither. It was something much more silent and much more deadly. It was gold, or rather the total absence of it. When the coins stopped being worth anything, the empire ceased to exist. And today, at this very moment, the United States is walking down exactly the same path, the same trap, the same mistake, the same ending. Before continuing with this story that will leave you breathless, check if you're already subscribed to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching this video from. I love knowing how far these stories reach and connecting with people from all over the world who understand that history is the best teacher. To understand how Rome fell, you first need to see how high it stood. And when I say high, I mean a height that no civilization had reached before. In the year 117 AD, under Emperor Trajan, Rome controlled 5 million square kilometers of territory, from the mists of Britannia to the deserts of Mesopotamia, from the sands of the Sahara to the impenetrable forests of Germania. 1/4 of the entire world's population lived under Roman law. 50 million people spoke Latin or Greek. They traded with the same currency. They obeyed the same laws. They dreamed of the same gods. And all of them, absolutely all of them, trusted in one thing, the Roman denarius, a silver coin that gleamed the same in Alexandria as in London, that bought wheat in Egypt and silks on trade routes reaching all the way to China. It wasn't just money. It was trust converted into precious metal. It was the backbone of the most sophisticated economy the ancient world had known. Merchants crossed the Mediterranean without fear, because they knew that coin would be accepted in any port, in any market, in any corner of the empire. The soldiers of the legions fought fiercely for that monthly salary. Farmers paid their taxes with silver denarii. Senators measured their wealth in them. The denarius was the dollar of antiquity, the reserve currency of the known world, and Rome knew it perfectly. For more than 2 centuries, they maintained the standard with almost religious discipline. 95% pure silver in each coin. Each denarius weighed exactly the same, contained exactly the same amount of silver. That monetary discipline was their greatest economic strength. The foundation upon which they built roads, aqueducts, theaters, libraries. The foundation upon which they paid the most professional armies in the world. The foundation upon which Rome became Rome. But behind all that monumental glory, something deadly was growing in absolute silence. Something no emperor wanted to admit. Something no senator dared to say out loud. Rome had discovered a terrible secret. A secret that would eventually destroy everything they had built over a millennium. They discovered they could cheat the system, that they could manipulate the value of their own currency, and that, at least at first, no one would notice. The first step toward the abyss began in the year 64 AD, under Emperor Nero. The same Nero who played the lyre while Rome burned. The same Nero who persecuted Christians and murdered his own mother. But his greatest crime wasn't against people, it was against the currency. You see, Rome was in constant war. The empire's borders extended further and further beyond what they could efficiently defend. Germanic barbarians pressed from the north with increasingly bold incursions. The Parthians attacked from the east with heavy cavalry. Rebellions erupted in Judea, in Britannia, in Gaul. And each war, each military campaign, each legion deployed on the frontiers cost gold. So much gold. The imperial treasury coffers emptied faster than they filled. Nero faced a brutal decision. Either raise taxes to unbearable levels and risk revolts throughout the empire, or find another way to get more money. He chose the second option, the easier option, the quieter option, the option that would destroy Rome. He ordered the masters of the mint to reduce the silver content of the denarius from 95% to 90%. Only 5% less silver. Only 5% more cheap copper mixed into the alloy. A reduction so small that the coin still gleamed the same, weighed almost the same, felt the same in your hand. And Rome kept functioning as if nothing had happened. Soldiers accepted their pay. Merchants accepted the coins. Farmers paid their taxes. No one noticed. Or at least no one protested enough to stop what would come next. And there, in that seemingly insignificant moment, was where the poison that would kill the empire was born. Because if it works once, why not do it again? If you can reduce 5% of silver without consequences, why not 10? Why not 20? Why not 50? And that was exactly what the emperors who followed did. each one pushing the limit a little further, each one stealing a little more value from the coins, each one thinking they would be smart enough to get away with it. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, the man considered the wisest of his time, reduced the silver content to 75%. Septimius Severus, the soldier-emperor, lowered it to 50%. Caracalla, his bloodthirsty son, reduced it to 40%. And by the year 270 AD, under Emperor Aurelian, the denarius contained barely 5% silver. 5%. From 95 to 5 in little more than 2 centuries. What was once gleaming pure silver had become cheap copper painted with a thin layer of silver. They minted copper and called it silver. They printed promises without real backing. They created value out of nothing. And the people slowly, painfully, began to realize that something was terribly wrong. The shrewdest merchants weighed the coins. They bit them to verify hardness. They scraped them to see what was beneath the shiny surface. And when they discovered the deception, when they saw copper peeking out from under the thin layer of silver, trust began to evaporate. It was there, in that moment of collective awakening, where the empire truly began to die. And the most tragic part is that no one with enough power to stop it perceived it in time. At first, like all economic catastrophes, the effects were subtle, almost imperceptible to the common person. Prices rose, but gradually. Bread that cost 1 denarius in the market now cost 2, then 5, then 10, then 20. Elderly people began to say, "In my time, with 1 denarius, you bought food for a week." Young people didn't understand what they were talking about. For them, high prices were normal. But the merchants knew the truth. Merchants always know. They stopped accepting the new, debased coins. They demanded the old ones, the old coins with real silver content. Or better yet, they demanded gold directly. Gold coins, the aurei, became the refuge of value. But there was a devastating problem. There were almost none left. The monetary system that had functioned for centuries began to disintegrate. Barter returned like in primitive times before Rome. A farmer no longer wanted to sell his wheat for worthless coins. He preferred to exchange it directly for salt, oil, tools, or animals. Anything but those copper coins disguised as silver. The monetary economy, that marvel of Roman civilization, collapsed before everyone's eyes, and with it the entire bureaucratic and administrative structure of the empire crumbled. Because an empire the size of Rome cannot function with barter. You can't pay an army of 400,000 soldiers with chickens and sacks of wheat. You can't collect taxes in goats. You can't maintain a network of roads crossing continents without a functional monetary system. But this, as terrible as it seems, still wasn't the worst, because when money stops working, everything else collapses in cascade. The soldiers of the legions stopped receiving their regular pay, or worse yet, they received coins that bought nothing. Why fight on the frozen frontiers of Germania for coins that don't buy food for your family? Why risk your life for a salary that evaporates in your hands? The legions began to plunder the very cities they were supposed to protect. Soldiers became bandits in uniform. Generals, seeing the chaos, began declaring emperors whoever offered them better loot, not better pay and worthless coins, but better access to land, tangible wealth, slaves. Between the years 235 and 284 AD, a period of barely 50 years, there were more than 20 official emperors, and dozens more usurpers and pretenders. Most lasted less than 3 years on the throne. Most were murdered by their own soldiers when they couldn't pay them. The empire fragmented. Entire provinces declared independence. Gaul created its own Gallic empire for 15 years. Palmyra in the east did the same. Rome was breaking into pieces. And the final blow was still to come, because Rome faced an economic problem that not even its best minds, not the most experienced senators, not the shrewdest merchants fully understood. They were losing gold, real, physical, tangible gold. Gold flowed east, to Persia, to India, to China. Rome bought silks, spices, precious stones, but sold almost nothing in return. It was a massive trade deficit paid in gold, and that gold never returned. The mines of Spain, which had fed the empire for centuries, were being exhausted. Each year there was less gold coming in and more gold going out. The real base of Roman wealth was evaporating, and when they tried to compensate for that loss of gold by printing more debased silver coins, they only accelerated the collapse. It was a perfect vicious circle, a deadly trap from which there was no escape. Now imagine Rome in the year 400 AD. The same streets that once gleamed with polished marble, where victorious emperors paraded, are now covered with garbage and rubble. The magnificent aqueducts that brought fresh water from the mountains are crumbling. No one has money to repair them. No one has coins worth enough to pay the engineers and workers. The public baths, those marvels of Roman engineering where citizens of all classes mingled, are empty and abandoned. The markets that once overflowed with products from all over the known world are now deserted. Only a few desperate vendors try to exchange goods for goods. Roman coins, which were once the blood flowing through the empire's veins, are now worth absolutely nothing. Not even beggars accept them, because you can't buy bread with painted copper. The wheat that Rome imported from Egypt, Rome's bread, stops. Without real gold to pay Egyptian merchants, ships stop crossing the Mediterranean. Hunger spreads through the Eternal City, first in the poor neighborhoods, then everywhere. People who can flee, flee. Cities empty out. The urban population of Rome, which once exceeded 1 million inhabitants, is reduced to fewer than 50,000. People flee to the countryside, seeking the protection of local lords who can feed them in exchange for labor. Feudalism is literally born from the ashes of the Roman Empire. The great Roman armies that conquered the world are no longer Roman. They are barbarian mercenaries, Germans, Huns, Goths, Vandals, men who fight not for Rome but for plunder, men paid with land and loot instead of worthless coins. And when those mercenaries realize they can simply take what they want, they do. In the year 410 AD, Alaric and the Visigoths sack Rome. For the first time in 800 years, the Eternal City falls to an enemy army. Temples are plundered, patrician houses are burned, statues of the gods are toppled. In the year 455 AD, the Vandals do exactly the same. But this time worse, so brutal that their name becomes synonymous with destruction, vandalism. And finally, in the year 476 AD, a Germanic mercenary named Odoacer deposes the last emperor of the Western Roman Empire. A boy of barely 14 years old with a name that once meant imperial glory, Romulus Augustulus, Little Romulus, Little Augustus, a pathetic echo of the great men who bore those names. Odoacer doesn't even bother to kill him. He simply sends him into exile with a pension, because it no longer matters. The Western Roman Empire officially ceases to exist. 1,000 years of history end not with an epic battle, not with a heroic siege, not with a glorious last stand. It ends with a child emperor being gently removed from the throne. It ends with a sigh, not a scream. It didn't fall because of a great coordinated invasion. It didn't fall because of a devastating plague that killed its entire population. It fell because its money stopped meaning something, because its coins turned into worthless dust, and when money dies, the empire dies with it. The copper coins that once pretended to be silver rust in the earth. And the greatest empire the world had known becomes memory, becomes ruins, becomes warning. Now stop for a moment and look toward the United States. Look honestly at what is happening right now. Rome, at its absolute peak, controlled approximately 25% of the world economy. The United States today controls 24%, almost exactly the same. Rome based all its imperial power on the silver denarius. The United States bases all its global power on the dollar. And just like Rome 2,000 years ago, the United States has discovered the same deadly secret, the same seemingly magical trick, the same poisoned trap. It can print money virtually without limits. In the year 1971, President Richard Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. He closed the gold window, as it's known in economic history. From that moment, the US dollar isn't backed by anything tangible, not by gold, not by silver, not by any real physical asset. Only by the promise of the US government that it's worth something, only by the full faith and credit of the United States. A promise, nothing but a promise. And that promise has been printed more than 35 trillion times in national debt, $35 trillion that the United States owes and will probably never fully repay. Rome debased its currency gradually from 95% silver to barely 5% over 2 centuries. The United States has expanded its money supply by more than 400% just since the year 2000, 25 years of massive money printing, and it accelerated dramatically after 2008 with the bank bailouts, and then again in 2020 with pandemic stimulus. Trillions and trillions of dollars created out of nothing. The Romans minted copper and called it silver with a straight face. The United States prints digital bills, zeros in computers, and calls them value with the same straight face. And just like in Rome, prices are rising alarmingly. Inflation returned with force. Confidence in the dollar as a store of value begins to erode at the margins. China accumulates gold at a record pace. Russia accumulates gold and reduces its dollar reserves. India buys gold like never before. Brazil, South Africa, Saudi Arabia talk about alternatives to the dollar. The BRICS countries openly discuss creating an alternative currency, potentially backed by gold, by real commodities, by something tangible, just like the Roman merchants who began rejecting debased coins and demanding real gold, just like the traders who weighed coins and discovered copper beneath the silver. History doesn't repeat exactly, but it rhymes with terrifying precision. The Romans thought they were too big to fall, that their empire was eternal, that their military dominance guaranteed their economic dominance, that their currency would always be accepted because they were Rome, because they were invincible, because they were special. Americans think exactly the same thing today, that they're too big to fall, that the dollar will always be the world reserve currency, that their military dominance guarantees their economic dominance, that they can print eternally without consequences. But history has memory. History keeps records. History doesn't forget. And today, at this very moment, we are repeating the same ancient story. Only the names of the currencies have changed. Only the faces of the emperors have changed. Only the uniforms of the soldiers have changed. But the script is the same. The mistake is the same. The ending will be the same. When money dies, everything else dies with it. This is the most important lesson that Rome left us written in blood and ashes. Rome didn't fall for lack of brave soldiers. It had soldiers. It didn't fall for lack of brilliant generals. It had generals. It didn't fall for lack of defensive walls. It had walls. Rome fell for lack of trust. Because at the end of the day, an empire isn't armies with swords. It isn't stone walls. It isn't laws written in marble. An empire is a shared idea, a collective belief, a common dream. The idea that tomorrow will be better than today. The idea that your hard work will have value tomorrow. The idea that the coins you save today will buy bread tomorrow. The idea that your children will inherit a more prosperous world. When that idea breaks, when that trust evaporates, when that belief crumbles, the empire crumbles with it. It doesn't matter how many soldiers you have on the frontiers. It doesn't matter how many military victories you've accumulated. It doesn't matter how impressive your monuments are. When people stop believing in your currency, they stop believing in you. And Rome learned this in the most painful and most costly way possible. A full 1,000 years of greatness, of achievements, of civilization, of art, of law, of order, erased because they forgot a simple and brutal economic truth. Money is only worth what it represents. It's only a symbol of real value. And when the denarius stopped representing real silver, it stopped representing real value. When it stopped representing value, it stopped representing power. When it stopped representing power, it stopped representing Rome. The empire fell, the barbarians celebrated, the Dark Ages began, but the lesson was carved into history forever. The question we must ask ourselves today, the question that keeps economic historians awake at night, is simple and terrifying. Are we paying attention? Are we learning? Or are we destined to repeat the same catastrophic mistake in different clothes? Because if there's one thing Rome's history teaches us, it's this: no empire is too big to fall. No currency is too powerful to collapse. No civilization is immune to the laws of economics. And when you play with the value of money, when you manipulate trust, when you print promises without real backing, you're not building prosperity. You're building your own downfall. You just don't know it yet. Just like Rome didn't know until it was too late. And in the next episode of this series, we're going to explore how a single fiscal error destroyed 3,000 years of stability in one of the most mysterious and advanced civilizations in history. A culture that mastered astronomy with precision that still amazes us, that built pyramids that defy our understanding of ancient engineering, that developed mathematics and calendars more accurate than Europeans of their time, but that couldn't master its own greed, that couldn't resist the temptation to sacrifice the future for the present, and that paid the highest imaginable price, the complete extinction of their civilization. If this video made you think, if it made you see the present with eyes from the past, if it made you question official narratives about money and power, then subscribe to the channel right now, because the stories no one wants to tell are exactly the stories you most need to hear. The lessons hidden under layers of propaganda and official optimism are the lessons that save civilizations, or at least prepare you for what's coming. History doesn't repeat exactly the same, that's true. But it rhymes. It rhymes with poetic and terrifying precision. And right now, as you watch this video, we are hearing the first verses of a song we already know, a song that ends with the collapse of an empire. The only question is whether we'll have the courage to change the lyrics before it's too late. Or if, like Rome, we'll discover too late that gold wasn't just precious metal. It was trust converted into physical form. And when that trust evaporates, the empire evaporates with it. See you in the next episode, where history becomes even darker and the lessons even more urgent.